What's up, fellow classers? It's Apollyon here, and what we're going to do today is we're going to focus on the Elsa attack. I've got a request to cover that strategy and take a look at some of the bases that it works on and exactly how it works, the composition. It's going to vary from base to base, but really the main thing is that you're going to have a bunch of witches and a bunch of freezes and then some other troops in the middle there. So we'll take a look at 3 or 4 of the attacks, and I'm going to throw in a fail too, just so you can see how the attack fails. It's an incredibly strong attack, probably one of the strongest attacks, especially for fresh hits in all of Town Hall 10. So we'll look at a few of them, and we're going to start with 26. So we'll freeze it. We'll pause it just for a second, and you're looking on where you can get access to a Inferno Tower quickly, and then you can worry about the other Inferno Tower later. And when you can send your wall wrecker in to get towards the town hall to get one of those Inferno Towers. Now this is going to be a little bit tricky here because you're actually not even going to get the Inferno Tower at 3 o'clock. You should, but you're not going to, depending on where you send the wall wrecker in. Now if you send it in at 3 o'clock, you will, and that's normally what I like to do, is send the wall wrecker in where it opens the compartment to get to the Inferno Tower. Now you're going to use your freezes pretty non-sparingly. You're going to want to make sure you keep your wall wrecker alive for as long as possible. So you're going to freeze Inferno Towers or heavy point defense groups that are on top of that, even the Queen and potentially the CC, depending on what it is too. To keep that wall wrecker alive, you're going to want to freeze the Inferno Tower periodically, or 1 or 2 or whatever it is, to keep your heroes alive. And then you're going to want to freeze sometimes the splash damage like wizard towers or bomb towers when you see your witches that are coming along the edges, and you want to make sure that they are able to take down those specific defenses. In almost all of these attacks, you're going to see very little amount of tank troops like golems or giants. It's going to be extremely witch heavy, throwing in some bowlers there when necessary, and using the healers as the tanks, as far as, or replacing the tanks as far as golems and giants. And I'm not going to spend this much time on each one of the bases, just to give you the fundamentals of how you're going to do it. So for this base, I would have actually sent the wall wrecker in a little bit lower at 3 o'clock, but we're going to send the witches in at 12 with healers behind. You want to get those witches right on top of each other so that the healers are targeting them instead of the skellies. And then a bunch of witches down at the 3 o'clock area with healers behind them, and then sending the wall wrecker. And that wall wrecker does not get into that Inferno compartment, doesn't even open it. I guess we're hoping that the Queen will step up and get that. But notice how we're using the freeze on that Inferno Tower over and over again, just continually freezing. I think we brought 6 or 7 freezes, and we're already down to 3 freezes at this point. But that wall wrecker is still up, going strong, and we've got our king that's popping the ability down towards the core. But again, we're still using the freezes to get that wall wrecker in, and at this point we have 3 freezes left. And that Inferno Tower at 3 o'clock is still up. We do not need to use that freeze on the Inferno Tower because it's pushing its way through the base, so that's perfectly fine. Now we do have one of the toughest CCs or enemy CCs to go against, which is a Laloon. It's not a very good one to have to face. But we've already used all the freezes. We were freezing down at that 5 o'clock area, if I didn't get a chance to point that out, to make sure that those witches stay alive, because we want the healers to keep them up, and we want everything to go smoothly. We've already popped the ability of the Queen, so at this point the healer is going to get an awesome switch to the Queen, get her back almost all the way up to full, because she's really not going to be in the line of any type of splash or point defense until she gets down to that Tesla. So she's getting healed all the way back up full. We've got no splash damage except that mortar at 7 o'clock for these witches, and 2 healers are going to be able to stay on top of those witches for the rest of the battle. So it's just going very, very well. And one of the other things that you're looking for when you're using this particular type of Elsa attack using healers is you want to make sure that the air defenses are not on the outside of the base or towards the outside, where they can target those healers quickly and take them out. So we've got a few seconds left. We'll fast forward it to speed so we can see just taking out that last Inferno Tower with tons of skellies that are going to tank for the Queen. So really cool attack. And we'll go down to number 29, and we'll look at Sinister hitting this base. Again, very similar composition, 7 freezes, 1 rage, 1 heal, and we're not using a jump on this particular one, but we're throwing in some bowlers on here, and we're dropping some witches. We're using the bowlers and witches at 6 o'clock to get that push through, and let me just go out a little bit. There we go. And we're not using healers in for the 6 o'clock area because there really isn't hardly any splash damage except for that one wizard tower, but after that there's no splash damage to worry about, so we don't really need healers to do that. The skellies are able to distract point defenses pretty well, and again we have another Laloon CC, and that really holds the queen back and the witches back because they can all target air, so it just makes it that much longer to take care of that. But you want to make sure you get that loon down, and we're also seeing a lot of P.E.K.K.A.s in the CC that we're using because they just help push through the base a lot more than Valkyries. They're a lot tankier and they can hold up these point defenses unless you're getting involved with a Inferno Tower, but then you have your freezes to go ahead and take care of that. So we still have the Queen ability that we haven't used yet, and that Inferno Tower is targeting just a bunch of different troops there in the core, and we still have our King up, although he's on life support, gone now, and then we have our witches coming up on the flank at 1 o'clock with healers behind them, so they're going to be able to do quite some damage there. And we've just got a huge army of witches and skellies coming up at 10 o'clock. That one witch is still going strong with those healers, and this is where the healers come into play. If you didn't have a healer on that witch at 1 o'clock, there's no way it would be able to take this wizard tower or that point defensive out. It would just be gone in just a couple of seconds, but it's able to take care of all those point defenses and the splash damage wizard tower, and we've got a GG and a 3-star hit there. And finally we'll go down to number 30, and we'll take a look at this one. Just a different type of design base, but able to send the witches and bowlers at 9 o'clock with some of the healers behind it. We actually had a healer target real quick after with the archer tower, but it was taken down very quickly, and we're choosing not to use any healers at 6 o'clock. Now you could use that. There's no air defenses, or there's nothing to target them, and it's actually kind of gutsy to use those healers at 9 o'clock, because if you look at those air defenses, they can target those healers, but we're planning on those bowlers to take care of those air defenses with the splash pretty quickly. Now we've got our CC out. Now we're going to freeze the enemy CC on top of that Inferno Tower. Let the Queen take out that Inferno Tower and now the CC, and we're going to continue to let the Wall Wrecker in, getting as far as it possibly can. Not using a jump on this one either. Now it's kind of gutsy for me to do that. I'd like to have a jump to push everything through, but that Wall Wrecker is getting so much damage. Freezing the Queen. Another thing that the freeze does, if you guys are not aware of it, is it resets the target, right? So if it's on top of your Queen or on top of your Wall Wrecker and you freeze that defense, it will pick the next closest target once it gets out of range, and it might be a whole different target, so you can save your Wall Wrecker or that. Now you've got some troops coming up on the flank, and we freeze that Inferno Tower for the last freeze. I think we were expecting to get a little bit further inside with that, but we still have the Queen ability, and we have tons of witches and skellies that are targeting that. And this is pretty much game over at this point. We just have too many troops with Queen ability, and Valks are still up and everything. So we're seeing a mix of P.E.K.K.A. or Valks. It's really your own preference. I keep saying that over and over again about getting used to what you feel comfortable with, and really what those Valks are going to need to get, or the P.E.K.K.A. is going to need to get as far as value. If you're going to be targeted by Inferno Towers immediately with your P.E.K.K.A., you might want to use Valks instead, because you're going to have 4 of them instead of 1 P.E.K.K.A., and they'll last a lot longer. But if you can have your P.E.K.K.A. tank for some splash damage in the core, then it's really, it's a good idea to just figure it out and find out what works for you. Now, I said I was going to show one of the fails here, so let's go to number 24. And this is one thing that I don't actually, this is not the one. Okay, here we go. So this is one that I was talking about where you're coming into two Inferno Towers at the same time, and for me, it never really works out unless you at least take your Wall Wrecker and target one of them immediately, because you don't want to have two Inferno Towers, even though the Skellies do distract, but you've also got Wizard Towers coming in here with no tanks whatsoever. So maybe if you were to throw a couple of Giants in there, or maybe one Golem just to tank for these Witches and everything else as it's coming into the Wall Wrecker, it could work. But we've got 8 freezes here with 2 poisons and 1 jump, so going very, very heavy on the freeze. So we'll go ahead and check it out. We've got 4 healers. We're going to have the witches at 6 o'clock and 9 o'clock, and then we're going to send the Wall Wrecker in somewhere around the 7-ish area. But there go the witches up at top at 9 o'clock, and then we've got the ones coming in at around 5:30, 6 o'clock, and the Wall Wrecker. And I think the way the Wall Wrecker comes in, it's going to go for that cannon compartment at 7 o'clock. And it's not really going to target the Inferno Tower. So now we're continually freezing that Inferno Tower, and now freezing the Wizard Towers at 6 o'clock, which again, without a tank, it's just very, very difficult. And we've got the 2 Inferno Towers taking the Wall Wrecker, so not even getting the value that you want, and there's no jump there to push through, so they're going to be stagnant here at the core. Or actually, no, I'm sorry, there was one jump. But you're going to be stagnant at the core here as the queen's doing her thing. That we do have a couple of the witches that are coming up on the flank, so that's going very well. But the queen is unfortunately not taking that step down towards the 6 o'clock compartment and getting that Inferno Tower. And that is definitely a problem. So getting stuck on the Expo, having to use ability, and right now it's just not looking too good. That air defense is taking out that those healers at 4 o'clock, and I think we've already lost one, and then we just don't have enough to push through on each of the sides. And even if we did, there is an Inferno Tower that we did not get targeting. It just wasn't open, and it's too far away for anything but the queen to get, so there's no way the witches would get it or the Skellies. So we'll just fast forward this, as it did not get a 3-star hit. But it is an incredibly powerful attack, but you really have to plan your spells out. Whereas with like a Hog attack or a Laloon, you plan out your deployment. With the Witch attack, you've really got to plan out where you want to put your spells and to get the most value out of it. And that's where you become a lot more successful. One of the last things I'll say that I did not say when I started was, you want to start you always want to start funneling, right? So you always want to start your witches on the opposite sides, and then throw your kill squad into the core, just so you make sure you get that group, that Wall Wrecker, and everything that follows it to go into the core, and let the witches continue to do their thing on the flanks or the other sides, with the healers behind them. So hopefully you all enjoyed this, and there's so many different compositions. Just get used to the ones that you're comfortable with. You get familiar with them, so you know exactly what kind of value you're going to get out of what kind of push, and you'll get used to it with different types of bases. But to be honest, there isn't one specific base that cannot be beat with this. And a lot of times you're looking for that town hall on the other side. It's a little harder when they're in the corners and you can't come in on a flat side, but even that can be done, as we've seen. So again, go ahead and try these things out. Get those 6-star clan wars and practice those 3-star attacks.